Mr. Petrou. Great seeing you again. Love the YouTube studio, the background. Even with the painter's tape, I could see it's a work in progress. So you're you know what? Before you know it, you're going to start your own channel and become a YouTube influencer like me.
Oh, I didn't want you to figure that out so quick, but yeah,
yeah. Competition. We're done.
Yeah.
Hey, let's jump right into it. I know you have you want to talk about Emerson College, sort of where they're at, and it's a kind of an interesting school, at least from an alumni perspective, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
So, let's start there.
All right. Well, you know how I always like to break us in with a little silly humor, so I want to 15 seconds on. I want to give a shout out to the D3 board, D3 Soccer OG Flying Weasel. And I think one of the D3 programs should change their mascot to the Flying Weasels. And I think it will automatically jump up to like the #1 nickname in college sports.
And it won't get anybody in trouble except for that community of flying weasels that would be upset that you're using their name.
Right. Or if you say that in a psychiatric office, that's on a response to a Rorschach card that gets you straight to the hospital.
Oh Lord!
So yeah, the Emerson Lions. I live like 15 minutes away, basically, from Emerson College, and with all the other schools in the Boston area and Massachusetts, like I've never really thought about it much soccer-wise or any other way either. But for some reason, well, I know a little bit why, but there's a couple of kids that I helped when they were in high school, and one of them ended up going to Emerson, and I sort of developed more of an appreciation for it. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But I started noticing this year when, I don't know, they were like maybe 4-1-3, and I just kept sort of checking in every week to see how they were doing. And I'm partly interested because their coach he was the senior captain at Kenyon when my son was a freshman. A guy named Dan Toulson, who's from New Zealand. This is, I think, his very first year as the head coach. He had been there a couple of years as the assistant. Now they're 9-1-5. They're in third in the NUMAC conference, but they have the tiebreaker with MIT. So they have 2 huge games left. They have WPI at home, and then they go to Coast Guard. So I think if they win one of those, or maybe even if they get a draw out of one of them, I think they're going to make the NUMAC playoffs. Emerson, I didn't realize this, they moved from the GNAC conference to the NUMAC in 2013. Their most recent prior coach was Brian Harkin, who Tufts fans will recognize that name because he was an assistant with Josh Shapiro at Tufts for several years. Then he became the head coach at Emerson. He frankly didn't do that great because the last 2 prior years they were like 3-13-1. So for whatever reason, Josh Shapiro still thinks he's great, and Josh Shapiro hired him at Harvard
as an assistant,
and that's how the head coach job opened up at Emerson. And Toulson took over. They have a very diverse roster. There's only 4 kids from Massachusetts. There's 6 from California, 5 from New York, New Jersey, kids from Phoenix, Miami, Atlanta, Virginia, Montana, England, Ukraine, France. So I did a little more research on it, and they do have some graduate programs. They have about 5,900 students, so it's a little bit bigger than I thought. And I started thinking of it more as kind of like a mini NYU because it's similar to NYU, and there really isn't its own campus. The campus is really the city of Boston, just like NYU in New York City. And then there's some overlap also in what they're good at. I mean, they specialize in communications and film, theater, sports journalism. So it's and they're extremely highly rated. And I don't know if they call it the Emerson Mafia or the Hollywood Mafia, but there's a ton of Hollywood people from Emerson. Just off the top of my head, like there's Norman Lear, Jay Leno, Henry Winkler, Fonzie from Happy Days, Dennis Leary, who I can't remember
every time.
What?
The Fonzarelli touch works every time.
Right. And Dennis Leary, I can't remember what movies I used to see him all the time. I haven't seen him recently.
No, he was on that Chicago. Isn't he like the fire guy?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And then there's a woman who just graduated this year who's the Boston poet laureate who gave she was featured 2 nights ago at the Celtics game to honor Bill Russell. That was pretty cool. And their women's program is also doing pretty well. So, I'm excited for them. They may not make the NCAA tournament, but I think we too often judge all these programs based on, whether we think they got a chance to make a deep run. But, these schools that have been kind of struggling, they got to take one step at a time. And, maybe in a couple of years, I think they have a great school to recruit to if they get the word out. But,
I always say, Paul, Mr. Newman, we, and I find myself doing this too, because what does everybody talk about, right? Like the top 20, the top 25 programs, and sort of go around circles on those. But, right, there's 420. There's 420 programs out there that, again, I always say the amazing thing to me is that there's 420, teams, and they're all getting educated. It's like the soccer's the afterthought almost, right? Like just remarkable in that way. And some of those guys will never get the attention, and they're for whatever reason, right? Like, so.
Right. No, and there's a bunch. There's some that are probably the challenges are too great. I like some guy hit me on the boards about mentioning Guilford, who just beat Lynchburg. But but this topic did get me onto sort of the programs that have been struggling.
Yeah.
Programs that have kind of deteriorated. I put those in kind of 2 camps. One of those are the programs that I think have very significant challenges. Resources, the financial issues are huge. There was actually, this topic came up during the COVID year on the soccer boards. And there was a lot of predictions, especially during those months when it was the most dire, that like a lot of colleges weren't going to survive.
Yeah.
And even places like Messiah, like the faculty were like worried. And so I don't actually know the data on that or how many schools actually did fold. The ones that I follow for D3, not many.
Yeah.
And some of the schools that I'm going to say are struggling, maybe they're struggling for other reasons. Yeah. But the ones that, the few that I kind of wanted to mention were like in the NCAC conference and the OAC, which you and I are both familiar with. The first one to go was Allegheny, which just 10 years ago was getting to the NCAC tournament most years, had a pretty good, they had some good teams, good program, and they started doing so poorly, they actually had to leave the NCAC and go to another conference.
When I was playing at Mount Union, Allegheny was one of, if not the regional powerhouse. Like Allegheny, Ohio Wesleyan, those were the big guns, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's
Right.
why I watched a game, a month ago, and I was just surprised.
No,
Surprised.
they've really plummeted.
Yeah.
And now the one that's still in the NCAC, but I don't know for how long, because there is Hiram,
Mm-hmm.
which has really had I mean, that's another school that, like, when my son was in college, I mean, Hiram one year was like 15-3-1.
Yeah.
They had some good teams too, and now they're like, they're almost like Muskingum or some of these teams that win 1 or 2 games a year.
Yeah.
And
Like
then I bet you
Heidelberg.
played these guys.
Yeah.
Because Kenyon actually played them in the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Heidelberg.
Yeah.
Heidelberg's like, I was shocked. Like, I think they've won 1 game.
Yeah.
And they're getting beat like 5-0, 7-0.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if you know anything about what's going on in Heidelberg,
Mm-hmm.
but that has surprised me.
I don't. I'm with what I mean. Look, the reality is too, and I don't think people realize, right? Ohio, like, it is a competitive cauldron of small schools, like legitimately, right? Like the entire OAC, and then there's countless other schools, NAIA schools. I mean, I think it's, along with Massachusetts, it's probably, and New York, right? It's probably got to be 1, 2, or 3 of the most small schools in the, in a particular state.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I wonder if there's economic conditions that are unique to Ohio too.
Yeah, that very well could be.
Yeah, but Pennsylvania and Massachusetts are 2 other states that have just a ton of D3s.
Ton of these D3s. I do know there was, for a while, and I'd have to dig that out. There was actually a guy or some academician, whatever, smart guy, who did a database of all of these schools, and during COVID, and he was he sort of like graded every one of them and said, these guys are in trouble, these guys are in trouble. Right. And I know that, I mean, because I always looked at it, Heidelberg, and I know Hiram was and I heard that anecdotally through my contacts at Union, that Hiram was. No,
I meant to mention that because somebody from the boards actually sent me that whole thing. I think it was I don't know if it was in the New York, there was a whole printout of spreadsheet.
Yep.
And there were schools that they said were in trouble that would like Kenyon.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they didn't predict Kenyon to completely go under, but and then there were a ton that they didn't think they would make it. So I think that hasn't turned out to be. Maybe we'll get some feedback that it is worse than I think, but.
Well, I think what the schools realize is that they got kids back for the fall, right? Like, come hell or high water, we're going to have them back, because otherwise, then I could see them being like, well, we're in trouble. But
right, and that's part of why we always hear about why these schools, these teams have these huge rosters. Yeah, they need the money.
They need, so, they're easy recruit. It's an easy way to get kids in, right? If you have a sports program, I know, like Mount Union, it's like half of the students play some sports, like, or some ridiculous number, probably not half, but it's significant in a lot of schools.
So the other category are schools that I don't think really have a good excuse, and I think it has to be how much the institution focuses, whether or not they just lost a coach or they got the right coach. But there's places like Trinity in Connecticut, Union in New York. DePaul has slipped somewhat since 10 years ago. Haverford is like down. I mean, Haverford was an Elite 8 level team just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And then Grinnell in Iowa, which I know they're pretty isolated, but I mean, Grinnell's like one of the best colleges in the United States. I mean, they should be, almost NESCAC level, and I think they're doing average this year, but they're not even in that conference with Loras and Luther and
the American.
So I don't know what the deal is at Grinnell. Loras has slipped a little bit. Springfield, Rutgers, Camden, Salisbury, Wheaton, and Illinois, which we always hear on the boards. Wheaton is one of the huge historical.
This will get me in trouble. And it's College of New Jersey, TCNJ, NCAA's, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, pretty dominant program. And then I think part of that is because they basically raise their academic standards. And so it's hard to get into the school.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to get into Tufts, and it's right. Like, and so
right.
I don't buy that one. Just like the ones of the schools of faith, right? Like that they have some sort of faith element to it, no matter how. Like those are the other ones that I'm like, there's no reason why you shouldn't. I pick on them all the time, but Catholic is another one. I think they should be 10 times better than what they are, and consistently, right? And instead, they're just a conference team, right? Looking to win the landmark and then get their bid and see how far they go. But,
and then in terms of, I'm curious to see what you say about this. In terms of what are the most significant factors, I keep coming back to it's the coach. Like the two examples are Josh Shapiro. Like, I don't know if you remember this or you were into it then, but Tufts used to be terrible. Yeah. Like when Josh Shapiro took that job, is one of our friends on the board who covers the NESCAC frequently used to say all the time, like the coach, I think it was Ferrigno, left Shapiro like a broken down Keurig machine and a bag of balls. But they were consistently below 500, and then. Within 2 or 3 years, he had them like beating Messiah in the Elite Eight, and they won their first title. And 4 titles later, now he's the head coach at Harvard. And then Bianco at Denison.
Yeah.
Denison had been sort of very mediocre, kind of middle of the road.
Yeah.
He just immediately turned them around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, these coaches that have like a purpose and a vision, they must have institutional support.
Yeah.
Denison's a school that has a lot of money, so that's not a problem. So I think the coach and then having a clear, like, I'm going to turn this program into a national contender.
Yeah.
Now, maybe every coach thinks that and they don't succeed, but.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I do think, again, I go back and I said this for a while. I have this crazy idea that any school, right? Any school has the capacity to be at a very high level. And now it's just a matter of, do you have, like you said, just sort of all of these elements that sort of come together. And I do think it's spearheaded by a really, like you said, dynamic coach who, has a vision for where he wants to get to and doesn't let the one game or the one season sort of get in that way. And he's always building to that point. And I think,
course, one of the keys is they have to stay and not do so well that they get recruited to a better job.
Correct. I think the staying around and the same coach consistently is really important. But and the reason why I say that I think any school has the capacity is, and I think it's a great place, but I mean, Messiah astounds me. It is in the middle of nowhere, right? And, and it's a small Christian school.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad you brought this up, because that's sort of my point about Guilford. And I mean, like, a lot of these schools are in very rural areas.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look in a college guidebook, it actually says Kenyon is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Right. So why is that, right? Like, that's why I said any school has the capacity, and I think for a while I always thought, oh, the NESCACs are so good is because they're so academically, and I'm like, I think that's just one component to it, right? Like, kids got to want to go there, and for the soccer as well, because how do you get a really good player going to go there as opposed to somewhere else? And but you just Elizabethtown, again, that's another one where I'm like, what happened? I mean, they used to be the bomb, right? Like, and now I think they're having an okay year, but they just
they've been okay, but they haven't had they're not competitive with like Messiah.
Yeah. And so I do think it's that. I do think it does ultimately come down to a coach who is, doesn't. And I think what happens, and I mean this respectfully, I guess, like, because it happens to everybody, right? Like, got all this energy going in, and then it gets a little tough, and then it's just sort of like, well, I'm just going to figure out how do I get through the year, right? And they're not right. They don't have that drive to sort of make it happen, and I think that happens a lot. And in a lot of cases, the guys who are the head coach, but then they're also the assistant, athletic guy for transportation, or have this other gig going to like that. I can understand those guys, right? That's tough. But but I think anyone has the capacity, and I'll until somebody proves me otherwise, like, I don't, like I said, I just look at Messiah, like, how does Messiah,
No, I think it's a good investment, because it brings a lot of positive attention to your school in general.
I think it is the no-brainer, right? Like, look, you don't have to win, but if you show that you're and if you have a school, and again, I'll use these guys, Mount Union, as a perfect example. Granted, the football team and all of that and what it brought, but right, if you have a school that shows its commitment to athletics and doesn't treat it like, oh, it's just the dumb jocks or whatever, like, it does a lot for the school. I mean, again, case study is Mount Union. Like, when I started there, it was like any other school. There was nothing. And now you go back and it's like, oh my gosh, look at all of this stuff as a result of a real healthy athletic program.
So that's
we could go on for a day. Like, this could be a topic in itself, right?
Yeah, I want to get to your segment.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a softball first before I give you what you really want.
Okay.
I feel I know you're going to tell me I'm like a complete idiot. I never understand why players raise their hand, one arm sometimes, two arms sometimes on these corners and free kicks. Like, is that mandatory?
No.
I don't feel like they do it all the time.
No, usually. So again, this is back in the day, and usually they're just signals to sort of where the play is going to happen, right? Like, there's probably every team, they should have sort of like different corner kick schemes. And so the guy who's taking the kick looks and sees what's going on. And then he's like, for us, it was simple: near post, far post, right?
So it's either play one or play two?
Yeah, pretty much. the more complicated it got, it was like, wait, what? Guys would be like, what play was that? And yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a necessary, it's not a mandatory thing.
No.
Yeah.
It's just more like it's, hey, my arms are up. When I drop them, start your run.
Yeah.
Right. And then everybody starts, and then I send in the ball, and
you
hope that your runs coincide.
All right. So now I'm going to give you this.
Wait, did I rain on your parade? Did you think there was some big?
I couldn't believe that it was actually mandatory, so I actually had no clue what it was. I mean, I would think the signals for a play would be a little bit trickier. Like, I don't think Bill Belichick would go for that.
No, you don't see most of the time. The coaches now have the big cardboard boards with like pictures of a bird and then a fist. That's what you see.
All right. So I imagine for you, this is like me getting like really good key lime pie with a really good whipped cream. But I'm going to give you a goalkeeper.
Okay.
Question. And I know you and I were talking about, well, the question, I know on the boards, there's been a lot of stuff about, whether you should block it on a free kick or that game with, who was it? NYU and Emory. And then a couple of days after that, I watched a lot of the Ohio Northern John Carroll game, and it got down to the last couple of minutes, and Ohio Northern was up 1-0, and John Carroll was just frenetically pounding the net, throwing shots up.
Yeah,
and there were two or three that I asked you to take a look at, where the keeper ends up having to. Well, I don't know if he has to. That's what you're going to tell me, but ends up tipping it over the bar, which seems like a slightly different kind of. I mean, you're giving up the corner, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to have you roll the tape and.
Okay. All right. So let me just full disclosure for folks that are watching. I am not anti tipping it over the bar, like blocking a shot. Like I'm just really picky about it. Like it demonstrates things to me. Like I feel maligned right now, especially after getting
right. Now, welcome to my world.
Kindred spirits. It just I see too much, and probably I played too much to not notice things. And all right, so I'm going to do this. Let me, if I can.
By the way, for those curious, this first shot is from a kid that plays center back for John Carroll, who I think he's a D1 transfer from maybe Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, he was very, very good. Oh, there it is. All right. You can see it now, right?
Yep.
All right, so this just, because I'm going to start it here, and here we go. Drills the ball and back and to the left. Tips it over the bar. So I'm going to say two things. So just on this play alone, first of all, I think it's perfectly legitimate tipping it over the bar, because that is a bullet. And you got 3 minutes left, and the worst thing that could happen is if that ball went through your hands, because it is a bullet. So I'm perfect. See, I'm reasonable. I am perfectly fine with this tipping over the bar. Here's what I am not that I'm not fine with it, but whatever. He could have just jumped up, tipped the ball over, and landed on his feet. And that's the thing that it sort of annoys me about that. And like I said, perfectly legitimate, tip it over. That's a bullet. And it's probably dipping down, and there's a hole set in the flight. I could totally understand that.
Yeah.
But every time I see a keeper go up, bend backwards, tip it over, and he's kicking his feet back, that to me is just like he's sort of milking it a little bit. Because if it were legit, it would the opposite thing would happen. He would sort of fall back, reach up, and he'd kick his legs up to try to get some additional height. Mm-hmm. Here, he's just sort of curling his leg back. So that's point number one. But again, perfectly legitimate tipping it over for a corner kick with 3 minutes left. I'd rather fight the corner than screw up here. I'm like I said, I am perfectly reasonable person sometimes.
All right, well, let's fast forward into the action.
Yeah. All right, so what was it, 130? Or no, 55, that was it. All right, this is the second one. Okay. So, again, perfectly legitimate. I'm wondering why he didn't get his other hand up. This one I thought he could have maybe caught, but he doesn't get both his hands up. So I'm like, okay, maybe there was something there. The
first one I thought surprised him, like he didn't realize it was coming. But that one, I think he could see the kid was going to shoot.
Yeah. The first one, yeah, that's true. That was a surprising shot from that range. And from that, I mean, he nailed it. But again, this one, he's a little dramatic, but hey, he, again, perfectly fine with tipping the ball over the bar. I think this is the play. This is why I'm so particular about it. And again, both legitimate saves. So I'm okay that he gave away the corner on these because they were both difficult shots to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why I get so particular when I'm like, can you catch it? And if you can catch it, what does it do? Because, right, what happened? I think it's this one, right, where he surrenders the corner. John Carroll's throwing everything forward. And then this happens, right? Like, they didn't score. I think he makes a save and it goes off of the guy on the post. It's hard to tell. It does look like he gets his hand on it, so it's a great save.
Oh, I forgot about that one. That one's like point blank.
Right. So It looks like he gets his hand on the ball, taps it, it goes off the guy's chest, and he clears it out.
Yeah.
But what if that's a goal, right? Like, just hypothetically, so the keeper tips the ball over the bar when, let's just say for argument's sake, that you could say, like, he should have caught the ball, right? Yeah. And he just opened his team up to a corner kick that led to that. Like, what if they scored? And then who do you blame? Right. Oh, you blame the defendant. No, to me, I'm like, no, where does this start? This starts because the keeper didn't catch the ball when he should have. That's what I get so particular about. This was a fantastic game, by the way. It was really, really anyone.
So that was the last one. So what about? Is there anything in it in terms of when you're getting peppered like that in like quick succession?
Well, here's the thing too. People don't realize it, right? Like, keepers get tired. This is a whole other discussion that we can have about. Yeah. It's not easy. You're under constant stress back there. You're hyperactive, trying to keep an eye on where things are coming. You're hitting the ground. You're going side to side, right? And again, you're diving. You're hitting the ground. You're doing all this stuff. That gets tired. And after a while, your brain, it's like anybody else. You're as reactive as anybody else. So
you're tired, and I imagine you're also like freaked out, like you don't want to give up the game-tying goal like in the last 15 seconds.
Which to me, again, and I give the keeper, the Ohio Northern keeper, credit. like he's probably thinking that, like, don't make any mistakes, don't screw it up. And so,
Right.
hey, I'm just going to tip it over the bar, tip it over the bar.
Yeah.
And
No.
that's perfectly legit. I would, again, I got, I didn't realize I picked on the gentleman's son, but yesterday in the Amherst, or yesterday, con game, was it Tuesday?
Yeah, Amherst, Connecticut. Yeah.
Yeah, where the tying goal, right? The tying goal was a foul, which I think was legitimate. I thought it might have been or could have been a red, but whatever. But then the keeper comes out to get the ball and drops it, and they score. And that's the kind of example that drives me nuts, because it's like, first of all, if you're going to come out and catch it, you better catch the darn ball, right?
Yeah.
And or punch it away. Like, I'm okay with those things, right? What I'm not okay with is a goal. And under any circumstance, I'm not okay with a goal. So.
Yeah, well, watching this John Carroll Ohio Northern game live, I was absolutely convinced John Carroll was going to score that last minute.
Yeah. Oh, and they're just kicking the ball whichever way just to land right in front.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus, it was a huge game. It was a huge game for both.
Conference. Yeah. They have. I didn't realize they have like home field advantage on the line, which is a big deal in the OAC. That is a big deal, especially the midweek games. I mean, some of these places are 4 hours away from each other. You don't want to do that in the midweek.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, hopefully you're satiated by that.
No, I'm just angry. Did I tell you on the boards? I'm thinking, which I don't know, Nicholas. Maybe we should talk about this, because you are a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever. You do deal with this stuff. Like, now I feel inclined to watch like a boatload of games and just watch keeper saves. And how many are created because of an error, what I would qualify as an error for a goalkeeper.
I do not advise that.
Do you have medicine that you keep?
No, this is like last year when you wanted to count all the passes.
Yeah. It's not, it doesn't make for a pleasant fall. Like,
yeah. You don't want to pigeon yourself, hole yourself as, given the arc of your career right now, you don't want to pigeon yourself with the whole goalkeeper thing.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
When I need content, I could sort of dig through that, but right now,
right. All right, so here we go.
Big games.
Match of the week, and I'm going to give you, just like I did last time, I'm going to give you 5.
Okay.
And this time I'm going to tell you which one to talk about. No, you can pick your favorite.
Just for the record, the last one I did the first one and the second one, the one we had last week, I did very well. What was the game we chose? I already forget, but I thought I won it. You said 2-2.
I forget too.
Yeah, you said 2. I remember it was 2-2, and I said no, it's going to be 2-0. That was your call. You said 2-2 tie, and it was 2-0. Is it Bridgeport? Somebody? No. Okay. All right. So what games?
No, and if you don't pick the one I want you to pick, then I'll get you to spend 2 minutes on that one. So,
okay.
Tomorrow night, there's really only one big game, but it is a big game, is Trinity, Texas at St. Thomas. And, you know how fickle all of us are. Like, St. Thomas was sort of like the new darling, and now, like, everybody's done with them now. They only lost, like, 1 or 2 games.
Because it wasn't Trinity.
And I think Trinity is quietly back on track.
Agreed.
And if they ever get that I don't know why. This is another. Now, can I gripe a little bit?
Feel free. I love griping.
Like if your kid gets insulted on ESPN, nobody bats an eye. But for D3, if you get insulted or feel insulted on a soccer board, then it's like a big deal. Or if you ask if somebody has an injury.
Yeah.
Like in D1 sports, there's no hiding if there's an injury or not, or like Michael Meese is like, he might, except for your new buddy at Messiah, Michael Meese might be the best striker in the country.
Yeah.
And he's like, I mean, he's incredible. And like, that makes a huge, I mean, if he's playing and he's 100%, they're like a threat.
Yeah. He's a one-man wrecking ball up top.
Yeah.
I liked him. I called him an All-American last year.
So I don't know, who knows? I have no idea what's going on with him.
That would be cool. Can I just tell you, to add to your gripe, it would be cool if they made, I hate to say a requirement because that probably like only a handful of people like us would care, is like if teams release their, okay, these guys are injured just off the roster. They don't have to say what. They don't have to say, no, these 5 guys are injured.
Yeah, they won't do it. They won't. It's like teams that like, sometimes you'll see them post like a PK shootout on their website right after a game, and they immediately take it down because they don't want the other team studying it.
Yeah. Hence, University of Paywall's paywall.
Right.
Like they don't want anybody to see what they're capable of.
Yeah, nobody's seen Rochester all year. All right, so there's that game. We already used up all our time on the segment. So there's that game. And then this is sort of I went back and forth. I felt about this one a little bit like I did the other day about Western Connecticut and Trinity, Connecticut, because it was the bottom of the NESCAC versus a big-time mid-major.
Yeah.
So St. Joseph's, Maine, is playing at Brandeis on Saturday. Brandeis is having a tough year, but they're still a good team. They're a UAA team. St. Joseph's has been, sort of before this year with Western Connecticut, St. Joseph's has been the sort of small school surprise. And then 3 o'clock, Ohio Wesleyan at Denison. Also at 3 o'clock, St. Lawrence at Skidmore. And I almost didn't put this one because I'm so embarrassed that I can't say it. You're going to know it, how to say it. Misericordia. I butchered that even worse than I thought I was going to.
Misericordia. Yeah, okay.
And they're playing Stevens. And then,
are they at Stevens?
Yes, I think they're at Stevens. Let me just mention 3 others. I'm not including these, but they should be mentioned.
Okay.
Big games this weekend. Mary Washington at Christopher Newport.
Yep.
Middlebury at Tufts is going to be an incredible game.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
And Wesleyan at Bowdoin. But we don't do NESCAC on this show.
I'm surprised you didn't put your mandatory Kenyan game.
Right.
I mean, I don't know why I would say that, but
right. As I just said that, I got 10 negative karma points. All right, so
your private messages are going to blow up now.
Right. I'm done.
You're done.
This is when all the burner accounts come after me.
Oh Lord. I do like. I mean, I think Stevens is going to handle Misericordia.
Okay.
So that doesn't do it for me.
I basically put that in for regional fairness, but
you're such a considerate.
You know which one I want you to talk about, right?
Well, I mean, the one that jumps out to me is the Ohio Wesleyan Denison game.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, the indirect Kenyan.
Well, but the other good thing is that they're actually teams you and I know something about.
Yeah. Although I do like St. Joseph's and versus Brandeis. It's at Brandeis, right?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Yeah. And that's tomorrow, Friday?
No, that one's Saturday.
Saturday. Okay.
The only one Friday is Trinity St. Thomas.
Ohio Wesleyan at Denison. Right? At Denison?
Correct.
So that's the one we're going to talk about. I think this is a must-have for Ohio Wesleyan. Like, if they don't do it, if they don't step up to this big game, I just think their entire season is just done.
Well, there's a little backdrop. I think that's true. And assuming that Kenyon doesn't lose to Hiram or Wittenberg, this game is going to determine who gets home field in the OWU Denison semifinal.
Yeah.
And I mean, Denison actually beat OWU at OWU in the semifinal last year, and then they beat Kenyon at Kenyon. But OWU would still prefer to play at
home. Totally.
Dr. J. Martin's soccer park.
Yeah. I think so I'm gonna say something, and I'm a big Brandon Bianco fan, so I hope he's not mad at me and he'll continue to talk to me. I actually think Ohio Wesleyan understands where they're at and why they need this game, and I am not sure Denison has. I'm not sure Denison is at the place that they need, that they want to get to. I think they've sort of come back down to reality a little bit. And I'm not sure this year is their sort of like vaunted year. I think last year was, I don't think anybody expected. Everybody was surprised. I don't think that happens again this year.
Yeah, I don't like you anymore because I was thinking you were going to go with Denison and I was going to take OWU. But I don't mind agreeing with you. I think OWU will find a way to win this game.
Yeah, I think they have that. They have that switch that I don't think a lot of teams have. That they know.
Right, they have a couple of special players who can create something out of nothing.
Yeah. So I'm going to go 1-0 because I don't think OWU scores a lot of goals.
Yeah, I'll go 2-1, but and it's also a great matchup because it's the mentor versus the pupil.
Yeah. Very true. True.
And that's the only reason I love it as a Kenyon fan is that one of them's either going to lose, which I don't care which one that much, that both will make me feel good, or they're going to draw.
And which will make you doubly feel good.
Yeah.
I said, I think it's going to be a great game. This is a chess match, right? Because I know, this reminds me of the hunt for Red October, where the captain from the submarine says, "I know their tactics." Like that's what Coach Bianco is telling his guys. I know their tactics.
Right.
Just need to find one.
Do you think he feels bad if he beats Jay?
I would no, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so. But I know there's a ton of respect there. Like,
right.
When I interviewed Coach Bianco, he couldn't have spoken more highly of a coach that of anyone I've ever talked to.
Yeah.
But he's he is. Let's face it, the guy is a legend, right? So even I was a little nervous when I was talking to him. Like, oh my gosh, this guy!
I couldn't believe you got him.
Yeah.
You got a lot of big people, but that was impressive.
That was a big one. I never thought I would have. I never thought I would have. He would have spoken to me.
Yeah.
But such a gentleman. So. All right. So I'm going 1-0 OWU.
I'm going 2-1.
OWU or Denison?
OWU.
All right. We'll have to remember this one. If I win this one, if I come, so far I think I'm undefeated. like I'm thinking one of those hats should be mine. Like that should be the trade off. And if I don't have any Kenyan stuff, I could send you.
You don't want to remind me how poorly you're doing in that little thing you got going on the board.
Like I said, I got everybody where I want them.
Did you get a point yet?
I did. I got 15. How brilliant!
No, that's when, like, I love the Celtics, and when they're like up 20, I said, "Oh my God, Phoenix has got them exactly where they want them."
Yeah,
I can't relax. That's the other thing I love about watching other teams. Like, I won't have any anxiety watching Denison and Owo.
No,
I'll just be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And to even say that sounds like so insane. Like,
you might want to take that shirt down and maybe I'll order you a like a OU Denison rivalry shirt, so they're both OU Denison, maybe one of those.
Yeah. Give it to me after one of them beats Kenyon in the NCAC final.
Yeah, and yeah. Champion.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Petrou, really do appreciate it. This was fun, as always.
Okay, buddy.